Good evening. I'm Jennifer Tesh, and I am here with my group partner, Kelby Lamar, and we are here to present on a profile on international students. International students are a unique minority population at universities. About 3.5 of college students in the United States are international. International students and international programs are instrumental in educating American students about global life. At many institutions nationwide right now, there's an emphasis on global learning and creating global citizens. Having international students in America at our higher education institutions is a great way to educate our students on the international global atmospheres that they might encounter once they graduate college. International students are very open to sharing information about their countries, national histories, and cultures. Some common characteristics we see of international students is their eagerness to succeed academically. And a lot of this could be due to their visa requirements and other educational requirements that they might have to meet in order to stay in the educational system in America. These individuals are also multilingual individuals, which makes them very unique. They also have an ability to cultures and a strong sense of nationalism for their home country. Now I'm going to pass it over to Kelby to talk a little bit more, about our international students.
Good evening, everyone. This is an image of some international students at Bristol University. As you can see, it's quite diverse, and that's indicative of international students traveling here to universities in America. And so there was a study done on the needs and characteristics of undergraduate international students at the University of Maryland. The majority of those students indicated that family was the most influential aspect of their lives, which is often the case with students traveling abroad to study in another country. Some items that they said affected their development included things such as the job experience, the coursework at the university, independent study, as well as friendships that they developed. Some educational objectives that they had were career development, independence in thinking and behavior, which is incredibly important in a foreign country, as well as a sense of direction for their career and their life, and an ability to express themselves orally, which in America is incredibly important, whereas in some countries, particularly those in Asia, it's not as important or as emphasized. Some international students face distinct challenges when transitioning to new environments. Some of these issues that we chose to address include academic issues, sociocultural issues, the high tuition costs that many students face when arriving at American universities, which causes them to have teaching assistantships and things of that nature. Language barrier issues are a huge struggle for some students. And to combat these things, there are a variety of support services that are needed to assist these international students with their transition. Some academic adjustments for international students include the following. So, liberal arts ideal of intellectual breadth can be confusing for international students, according to Charles and Stewart. Personal essays and open-ended questions that are common in America are often foreign to many international students because they're used to more of a traditional multiple choice, true, false, or straightforward testing format. Whereas here in America, it's more subjective and students tend to be able to express themselves further. And these cross-cultural differences can play a major role in the misunderstandings between American students and particularly Asian students who are coming abroad in the classroom. Pressure from the home country is also an issue that many international students face, particularly from their parents and their families. Oftentimes, these families have to struggle to gain the money to send their students abroad, and the student thus feels increased pressure and to perform and succeed while they are abroad here in America. And unlike American students, a bad grade for these students could affect their visa status and ultimately send them back home, which could result in shame and feelings of resentment towards the host country. And according to Peterson, the ultimate disaster is, in fact, returning home after failing in school without the degree. And so that shame is something that many of the students struggle with and attempt to avoid at all costs. Financial concerns are another major issue that several international students face. As I mentioned earlier, many of these students have to have research assistantships or teaching assistantships just to be able to afford to live in the country. And a drawback for some of these assistantships is that they don't allow the student to work off campus. So they're limited in the number of hours that they can work on campus, and they're not allowed to seek additional employment away from the university. And so although the assistantships can supplement the expenses of the international students, it can also be a drawback as well. And depending on the student's visa status, as I mentioned, his or her spouse, as well as themselves, may not be able to work off campus. $20 hours weekly is, in fact, the number of hours that these students on these visas are allowed to work. And as I mentioned, the spouses of students on F1 visas are not allowed to seek employment at all, which makes that 20 hours have to stretch over the entire month for many students, which can be an additional source of stress and burden for these international students who are already struggling immensely with other things. Difficulties with the language. Students who don't speak English well can struggle to communicate and adapt to the university while they are here in the U.S. The TOEFL test is a test that many international students take to gain admittance to universities here in America. And yet this test doesn't capture the nuances of real life speech that many of these students will encounter in the classroom. As a result, most Western European students and those with more comfortability in English, according to Trice, have more interaction with American students than other international groups, such as those from Asia, Africa, etc. And some language barriers continue. Here are two pictographs that show the real realities that some of these students face. As you can see, what American students said about themselves with their reactions with international students differ quite greatly in what the international students said about the American students. So there are kind of two polar opposite realities going on here, with what the American students are thinking that of their impressions with the international students, and what the international students think about their impressions with the American students. So until those two things become on the same page and going in the same direction, then I think international students will continue to have these barriers and a difficulty becoming comfortable in the American classroom. I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer for some information about safety threats.
Wonderful. Our international students, as they attend higher education institutions, do face some interesting safety threats. According to the FBI, international students have many safety threats that they must take into consideration. Receiving money for goods or services to act as a transporter is one of them. Many of our international students don't come with transportation, so they might get into some sticky situations financially there. So individuals often who offer free favors, such as issuing visas or residence permits, might also be something that our international students are faced with. There are also predators who may show undue interest in personal background or future career aspirations, seeing our international students as an easy target. An international student's lack of information may make him or her susceptible to increased crime. simply because they're not accustomed to the American culture or the dangers that might face them in certain cities as they're there for education, might make them a easier target for some crime. We've also identified an issue that our international students would face is both counseling and healthcare needs. As far as counseling needs, our international students, our counselors at institutions must be prepared to support these students. Um, Despite their language barrier or their difference in religion or culture, our international students will have a need to be supported as they are um, facing an interesting challenge about getting acclimated to a new culture in addition to facing the typical struggles of being a college student. Feeling that undue pressure that we mentioned earlier in the presentation about from their home country, that need to succeed at at all costs so that they don't shame their country or their family. So counselors must be ready to kind of to take that and kind of help our students go through those challenges. Additionally, the healthcare needs, like many international people in America, our healthcare system must be ready to service them with respect to their culture and their religion. So our healthcare technicians on our colleges campuses must be aware of those differences and ready to assist. They also must be able to provide full health care for our international students with the clinics at institutions. But if there are things that our students need that are not on the college campus, be prepared to um, offer some sort of service to take them to those doctor's appointments or proper care off campus. There are also residential transition challenges as any college student transitioning from their family's home into the residence areas, there is a level of difficulty. This is kind of made a little bit more difficult by adding in that international aspect. These students are further away than most students are from their home in their home country. And they might have communication challenges with their roommates because of this language difference that they have, but also the religious or cultural differences come into play and might create some barriers of understanding between the roommates. There are some food and dietary differences that we have seen become some areas of frustration for different cultures as they are rooming with American roommates, and just the not understanding of what their culture and their food interests and everything are. And then there's also other communication differences, such as different cultures use stronger or harsher tones or volume or different speeds that might create an issue for that language barrier with the roommates and create a struggle for them to really understand each other and get to know each other. There are, however, a lot of campus resources that student affairs divisions are providing for our students across the nation. Many are creating an international student kind of one-stop shop where they can interact with other international students. They have staff members there to address their needs, and they can just hang out and create that family sense that they're not getting since they're away from home. They also publicize, some campuses are publicizing campus events in different languages, hiring different culturally competent mental and physical health professionals that would serve in areas like I mentioned prior with our career or our counseling and psychological services or our healthcare professionals. They're providing career center services to assist international students with employment opportunities to really hone in on that global student and global need. They're employing international students to tutor domestic students in learning other languages and conducting assessments and evaluations of support services for international students. The goal is to prepare students for global society by hosting international career days, international food festivals, and international festivals so that the general student can get to know what an international student is and how they operate to try to bridge some of that gap and remove some of those communication barriers. There are dietary restrictions for international students, and what they eat on a college campus can often be a big struggle. The food options are limited on campuses, and they really don't typically have a genuine connection to the home as far as the meals that are prepared in these common food areas. One of the main issues that prevent students from eating healthy is the time that they are able to do that. Several of these students may experience food nophobia. A recent study by Edwards, Hartwell, and Brown found that after 3 months, Asian and European students' food nophobia levels decreased. So sometimes time is what it'll take, but oftentimes the food options that are available in our cafeterias and common eating areas aren't conducive to what our international students either need or really desire. But here at Georgia Southern, there are several different areas where we are supporting international students. So just want to take a quick highlight of those things. That way you can see that there are several programs if you are an international student at Georgia Southern of how you can get engaged on campus, and then also different activities and stuff that you can attend to get more acquainted with the international culture. There are also the Office of International Programs and Services at Georgia Southern. And there is a link here in the video to watch these if you would desire.